The following talk by Fosia Turner Stiliano was given at the Spirit Reliefs Forum Conference in July 2014. The talk is entitled Explorations of Inner Space, Encounters with the Self and Others, Beyond the Boundaries of Enculturated Consciousness.
I always give you such a sense of organisation having a lectern, because I remember being a child in a church and watching somebody, a priest, even at school, headmaster or headmistress, and they stand behind and suddenly everything just kind of comes into them and they take them on. So I'm giving myself a belief that I'm okay about being here. I have a question. How many of you have actually experienced for yourselves a past life regression? That's the majority, that's brilliant. How many of you has it been induced by somebody else? Or how many has it been spontaneous?
You need to ask one question first.
Spontaneous past life regressions. You've been in a place and suddenly you get a whole stream of information coming to you. Or a psychic telling you about your past life. How many have had that? And how many have actually been inducted into a past life? The majority of you. Great. So, what I want to start off with is, well, those were three ways of accessing the non-ordinary reality, non-ordinary consciousness. There are a whole lot of other ways that we enter non-ordinary consciousness, some involuntary and others with focused attention. With past life and life between life, it's very much a training of a channeling of the energy so that we can actually access what we are designed to access. David was talking earlier on about only using 2 strands of DNA when we have 12 or 14. People say now we've been downloaded upgraded from 12 to 14. The reason why we don't experience ourselves accessing the resources we do have is because I believe our attention is very seldom from within. We are socialized, we're educated to focus our attention outward. We pay attention, like I was saying. I sat as a young girl, as a young adult, as a grown-up, listening to somebody behind a podium, a lecturer, telling me how it is, telling me how I should view the world. And it's taken a long time before somebody said, ask yourself, look inside. You have everything you need, but nobody said to you, you're powerful. You have the tools. There are doorways. We have gone outside of ourselves to find the doors. You've gone through drugs, through alcohol, through sex. Well, that's kind of a bit, not quite outside because you've got to be inside to have sex. We have prayer, which is an inside going outside, but often it's from outside, from inside going outside, but not coming back in again. Am I making any sense? So we have these doorways, and one of the things I so love about the work I do is that I don't know what it is that when people come to me, I don't know what it is they need from me. But I know that they know at a level that they're not yet conscious of. So I know my job is to listen. And that's one of the hardest things because you're not taught how to listen. You're taught to pay attention, i.e. listen to me, but you're not taught to listen to you. And so my job is to help the people who come to me to listen to themselves. So I have to listen to me listening to them, to hear them, nudging to listen to themselves. And we can all do this. We need kind of just basic permission, the allowance to have it happen. So, can I just ask somebody, what made you decide to have the past life, to experience it? What was it in you that made you think, I want to do this? Anybody?
Somebody to do it.
To have a past life, to go to somebody or to be open to it.
I tend to see it in people, so that see what's happened in the past.
And how do you see it? Do you see it in
Pictures.
around the person, bouncing out of the person,
Between us.
in the space between you?
Yeah.
And how do you distinguish between what is theirs and what is yours? How do you
I
know?
just know.
It's from.
Sorry, I just know.
No, that's good. I'm asking because we're not often allowed to own what we know. We often have to defend, we have to protect, but it's very seldom that we can say, I know, I don't know how I know. But it's very clear, yes?
Yeah, because for me, with everything in the song, is that at one time I used to question it, and question it would go. And then one day, listening to somebody, probably David, I suddenly realised I do know. I don't have to explain it to anybody. That's what I see, and I say it as it comes.
Yeah.
And that way, it really does develop.
Yeah.
But for me, it enables me to find out what it is, and ideally clear it, so that the person can go on, with their lives. If it's something, it tends to be some event or something that's happened. As David said, it's normally trauma that you actually, once you've cleared it, shall I say, the universe or whatever your belief system is, enables them to sort of be as they should be. If I'm explaining it.
Yeah, thank you for that. I want to read you two things. Heaven lies about us in our infancy. Shades of the prison house begin to close upon the growing boy. So we come into this world open, wide open, with all the senses ready to be connected. We become acculturated, and the senses that are not needed, that are not recognized, begin to be switched off. But the thing to remember is that our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting. The soul that rises with us, our life's star, hath elsewhere its setting, and cometh from afar, not in entire forgetfulness, and not in utter nakedness, but travelling clouds of glory to become from God, who is our home. And one of the things about doing past life regression, life between life, is that you get to enter the doorway, to find yourself back to this connection, to the energy, the trails of glory that you come with. So, David mentioned Michael Newton, and I was trained by Michael Newton. And Michael's not the first one who has discovered life between life. You don't discover it, your people who come to you access it. They talk about it. And Brian Weiss, Roger Wilbur, and Michael Newton, none of them knew there existed such a thing as life between life until their clients came. And it doesn't happen right at the beginning. First, it was about past lives, and therapists didn't believe in past lives, and then people were talking about past lives, and then they were saying, well, actually, there's something like crypto-amnesia. You've forgotten that something read something to you, you told, or you were told something, or you saw something, and now you confabulated it and you made it part of you. It's taken a long time before people were willing to acknowledge that there might just be the possibility that there's more to us than what we see. So it is, when we are ready, it's almost as if when we allow our vibrations to become more expanded or to move at a higher frequency, that we begin to access more information. So Michael and Roger and Brian Weiss had these clients who talked about the state of being. So I'm not yet in a life. I'm here. And they start talking about it. And so it opens up a new doorway for therapy, for being able to work with people on stuff that is carried through from life to life. So how do I work with clients? So one of the things I have to do is to do a past life regression before accessing the life between life. And why? Why would it be necessary to do a past life regression? When you do a life between life, you go through a past life regression. And the thing is to help people to access their ability to connect, to find the doorways for them. And what is key for me in my practice is to help people to orientate themselves in their bodies. Mostly, when you sit there looking at me, talking to you, your attention is not in you, it's in me. But what would be really helpful for all of us is to have some way of maintaining our attention in ourselves as we listen to somebody, because we are always communicating with ourselves, but we are very seldom in cognizance of that inner communication. So what's really important for me is to have people listen to their bodies. To be able to access your inner self, there needs to be space. There needs to be some kind of allowance. The body has to open. So I would say to people, pay attention to where you are. Breathe. Experience the breath. Experience how, as you breathe, how your body receives the breath. There's a receiving happening, there's receiving, there's a letting go. There's a cycle that you are perpetuating every moment. Be aware of that cycle. So as they get into the cycles of their body, so they can get into the cycle of life and death. So in past life regression, as you experienced it, it's finding a place where you can be comfortable, to be able to let go of the protectors that says, no, you have to pay attention because here's where the danger is. So the first thing is that you become familiar with the process of owning your stories, of being able to make the connection that you have with you. And the second thing is to be able to allow the energy of the journey to happen. So, the key for past life regression is to experience death. What shuts us down, what shuts our ability to connect, are fears. We are born into this world with only two fears. The first is the fear of falling, and the other one is loud noise. All the rest is inculturated. All the rest we learn in our cultures. And they're not quite the same, but they are the responses. So, the fear of dying is a learned fear. And a second to the fear of public speaking. It's the other way around. But the fear of dying is what we need to get to put aside. So having people experience past life, not only to connect to who they were, for the purpose of life between life, is to experience death and why. Because the thoughts with which you die are the imprints for salient issues in this life, in your next life. So having people experience their death, having people know. So it's not just what you did, what happened, that's useful, but it's the process of dying, the process of letting go. So as you breathe in, you know what it's like to receive, but can you also know what it's like to breathe out, to let go? So you know what it's like to be born, to become conscious of your hand extending, you're connecting with your body, the process of letting go, of dying, and not to be frightened of it. So in our practice, the first session, the two sessions, one is the past life regression, and I normally schedule it a week before the Life Between Life. And people are often quite nervous about what may come, who they have been, what they might have done. Two reasons that people will come often. One is out of curiosity, the other one is there's a pattern that's interrupting their lives. So they will come and will say, I don't know what it is, but what I would say to them, whatever pattern you had in this life may not necessarily be a hangover from a past life. Let's go through, so regression is a very important part of my work. Let's go through the issues in this life. And if the issue has its origin in the past life, you'll get there. So they have one issue that concerns them about who they might have been and what harmful things they might have done, and that might be something that would make somebody be resistant to allowing the process, so they may block themselves. So before we can do the Life Between Life, there has to be familiarity and comfort in doing the process, to be okay with allowing yourself to experience a journey, and a journey for which you have no real maps, other than the sensors within you, other than the guidance of somebody's voice, other than the tugs of memory within you. So there's a lot of trust between the person who comes and the therapist. But the experience of dying is what, for me, the past life is all about. And so after we've had the first session with the past life regression, they talk about what they did and how it's and then later how it impacts on their current life. And I would say to them, so that moment of death, what did it feel like for you? And just before you were dying, what was that like for you? Was there a sense in you of anticipation? Did you somehow know but not know you were about to die? And then the process immediately after dying is the awareness of being not embodied. What was that like? So for me, what's important is not to have that experience out there, but to have it all in here so that the information resides within the body. Does that make sense? That the information should be here, so that as you live your life every day, you're maintaining the inner communication. You're aware of the signals that are going on in your body all the time. So those are important questions for me. And then, when we do the Life Between Life, that people come because they say, I know I'm here, but I also have a sense of a purpose, or I know I should have a purpose, but I don't know what it is, and maybe the Life Between Life will help me. And I say, of course it will help you. It will give you a perspective on the trends that you are working through. And so they come, and having done the past life, and they have a sense of how I work, they know me, they have a sense of how they work, and they trust themselves more. And it's that trust. It's the trust that opens the heart that's important. And so the past life regression, I don't know for each of you when you did your past past life regressions, how long that took. But generally for me, because it's a process of familiarization, it takes 2.5 to 3 hours. The life between life takes about 5 hours. So it's a big ask for both the person doing it and for the therapist, because you've got to stay focused. And you've got to keep the person doing the past life, life between life regression in a state of inner connection, and to recognize that they will do this. You'll go into trance deeply and you'll come up again, you'll have your conscious mind engaged, because of course it's always engaged. And it'll go down again and come up again. And you've got to be aware of what the body's signaling to you. So there's trust, and there is a list of the people that are important. I already have a sense of their lives, because with the past life regression, before we do that, we do case history, so I have a sense of what's going on in their lives in the past life. We do maybe some therapeutic work. In the life between life, there's no therapeutic work. It's about accessing information. So to start the life between life, we ask for a list of key people in your life, which I have a sense of. But it's interesting that when you focus people's attention on the life between life and the spiritual world, they may not make a connection between the people that the names they give you, and the people that have been currently in their lives, or the issues that are currently in their life. So there's a list of names that are important for them, and their issues, questions that they want asked of their guides. They would already have had a sense of their guide in the past life regression. This will be a connection with the guide on a slightly different level, because the guide will travel with you. So I have from them a list of names and a series of questions that they need me to help them ask, because when you're in trance, you don't always remember the things that you want remembered for you. And both the past life regression and life between life, they're recorded so that they can listen to it afterwards. The inductions are long. Do they have to be long? Not necessarily. But the longer they are, the more accustomed people get to being in trance state and to holding trance state. So if you're used to meditating and that ability to be aware of your conscious mind being a bit like a butterfly flittering, and you can still maintain that kind of inner focus. So that long induction helps. And then it starts off with, typically, again, having a sense of protection, having a sense of your soul, your spirit, your spiritual self. Just having awareness of it, having awareness of beginning to connect to your guides, drifting away from your place in the chair, having a sense of it's safe for you to do it. And because you've had the past life regression with the therapist, it's easier for you to do that because there's a connection. What helps more and more is the sense of that they don't have to worry about any trauma because they know that's not going to happen. And the first stage is a regression to the womb, to experiencing yourself in a state of transition. What's it like being in the womb? What's it like having the body you have? What's it like? Are you aware of the brain? Are you aware of the moment when your soul connected to the body of the the infant or the fetus. So you start off feeling very comfortable in yourself, feeling protected, allowing a sense of drifting, floating, and imagining a staircase. And whatever your age is, the staircase will have that many number of steps. And coming down, helping the person to come down, 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 into 2 memory stops to sharpen the memory, to exercise memory accessing. So we will ask for, before we get to the womb, we will ask for at age 12 maybe, or age 6, making sure that those are the ages where there was no trauma in the person's life. What happened? Drift out of, come away from the staircase, move to drift, allow yourself to drift to the front door of the home you occupied when you were 12 years old, and for the person to begin to describe it. Also important for the person to begin to hear their own voice. I mean, which they did in the past life regression, because it's always about you talking about what's going on with you. So in the life between life, it's them being able to getting more and more in touch with that process of listening to themselves in trance and being able to describe. So we ask specific questions about allocation of structures, the room, the house. How do you go from the front door to your bedroom? Do you go left or right? In your bedroom, clothes, colours. And these are important things, because when we access the life between life, there are symbols that will appear to you depending on what's important to you. So we guide them to navigate us, navigate themselves through their own memories. Thanks. It's age 12, and then age 6, and then we say, can you go to the earliest memory you have? And maybe 3 or 2. And people will often say, I never knew I could remember that much. Or some people will remember at age 1. And then the actual experience in the womb. What's it like? So already about the sense of your body or the brain that you have. Is it familiar? Is it similar to the brains you've had before? What's your sense of? So you're awakening in the body memory, you're waking body memories for the person in trance, your client. And it's surprising what they will say. They'll say, are you aware of? So you're in the room. Just allow your senses to become more and more open. What can you tell me about what's going on with your mother? Can you feel when her energy changes? Do you have a sense of her emotions at any time? Do you have a sense of being able to influence her emotions at any point in time? And sometimes it's surprising, people will say, yes, she was very depressed or very angry, and I did something, and she became calm. So they're aware there's an interaction between them and their mother. There's a sense of a being that's there that is very aware. And then taking them through that, becoming even younger, moving out of your mother's womb, and then immediately, the guide is going immediately into a past life. And that journey into that past life is a very short journey, because the point is not to experience the past life, but to have it as a doorway. And from that past life, going very quickly to the death scene, because they have experienced the death scene before. And why it's important for people to be comfortable with the death scene? Because when it happens suddenly, the energies are scattered. And then they don't know where they are, they can't access anything, it's shock, it's too much. So the ability to be familiar with the process of dying, to be able to be conscious of it, to be still with it, so the energies are contained, is important. And so the experience of the past life, of dying, quickly doing unfinished business, often the past life you have before the life between life are not the same. You know, the first past life regression and then the mini one that we have when we do the LVR, those past lives are not necessarily the same. So there'll be different death scenes and different unfinished businesses to do. But in the life between life, that unfinished business moment is very short. And then it's what happens after you've died. You're aware of yourself as an energy in spirit form. Be aware of what that feels like. And then just allow your consciousness to expand even more into that space of being an energy being. And tell me what happens. Now, I didn't say, is there a light? But I asked them to, because for me what's important is that each one will give you something slightly different, and that's so important because from each one of us we'll get a different aspect of the bigger picture. And they will the majority of people, in fact I can't think of one who hasn't, will say, I'm aware of this light. And I say, so what's the light? And they'll say, I'm like being drawn into it. And then, so allow that to happen, get drawn into it. And then what happens? And then they have this image. Some do and some don't, of a tunnel. Some have an experience of almost being vortexed. And I'll say, well, vortex where, or moving where, and is the movement slow or quick or whatever. And they talk about it. And that's so exciting when people are really in touch with the movements that are going on within them and through them. And a number of them will say, I will say, you've been on this journey before, it's familiar. Allow yourself to experience the familiarity of it. It's not the first time when you know it, somewhere in you. Allow yourself to experience the familiarity of it. And some will talk about being able to circle the earth. Some will stay around there for quite a while. And I say to them, when you are no longer in your body, time is experienced very differently. You will know that time is not linear. We only structure it so on the earth plane, but time in itself is not linear. And so they will spend time circling the earth or hovering over a particular part, but then they will feel a kind of tug that just propels them. And they will say, I'm moving faster and faster. It's almost like there's a magnet, there's a force pulling me. And then they say, oh, I can see ahead, and they describe what they're saying, and it's almost like they come to a landing place. The guide will be there to meet them, so the guide hasn't been before. But often the guide isn't there at the moment of death, when we do the life between life one. The guide will meet them at the landing place. When we do the past life regression, the guide is right there at the moment of death. But not when you do the LVR. And it just occurred to me, it's something I've never thought about before. It would be interesting to think the differences in the relationship of the guides to both those processes. So the guide will be there to meet them. And it's interesting, some people will be a bit tentative, and some people will be that you almost feel the energy opening up, and some people it's a bit close, and people it opens up, and they arrive, and the sense of being greeted, and I'll ask them to describe the guide. It's the same guide. And yes or no, sometimes you have different guides. And then the whole person, what happens then? And they will say, well, there's my guide and there's somebody else, and the last person I did, it was her brother that died, was there, and because she had been so concerned about him, and he was there because he wanted to tell her, well, the concerns were silly. So he was there kind of hopping behind the guide, waiting the guy to get over so that he could talk to her. And so she's describing all of these things, and you can hear the energy in her voice opening, widening, as she becomes more and more extended into her spiritual self. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's a sense of the energy in her that's been in the body is just kind of opening up and filling the room almost. So there are many stations when you reach life between life, and there's a place of connection to the people who are part of your spiritual home. There are the work you do. And often with the people who come to me, they've been working on energy. They've been working on the creation of energy, the shaping of energy. There's also been a group of souls who have been working on brain structures. Because they're saying that the brains are changing. They have to change the brains to be able to receive the energy vibration that's increasing. The human body is changing because the vibration on this plane, on the earth plane, is changing. It's increasing. So the bodies have to be able to hold it. So there are various groups of people talking about the energy work. And it's really fascinating. When we have groups of life between life therapists coming together, it's amazing the information they're getting from the people who've experienced life between life about exactly what it is we're doing with the energy that we don't bring with us when we are incarnated. David Furlong said that when you first read with Michael, he said we keep 80% in the spiritual world. Actually, we are taking more into incarnation now because we can handle it more. So there are people coming onto the earth plane with 50% of their energy, being able to be really light workers, energy workers, embodied, being able to really be spiritual beings having an earthly existence and not blocked from it. So we will talk about all the things they do. We will talk about all the people that are part of this soul group, about the lessons that they have been helping each other to work through. I had an experience, which is a very moving experience. One of my clients, in the case taking section of our work together before we did the first past life regression, she talked about a difficult relationship with her stepfather, that he had been an abuser of her in childhood, and how it was really hard for her to have a relationship with her mother because she felt angry that her mother was not aware, but she couldn't tell her mother, but she felt her mother should have been aware. So she had this strange relationship with her mother and her stepfather that she could not talk to, so she left him as soon as she could. And in the past life regression, we didn't talk about the stepfather didn't come up. But in the life between life, in the soul group, so she comes to the soul group. And as they come to the landing page, I just want to go back, I asked, what's your spirit name, what's your soul name? When you are in this place, what are you called? And that is to distinguish them from who they are when they are in their bodies. Who are you? And what's interesting is how the mouth will try to shape the sound. And they can hear the sound, but the mouth is really struggles. Anyway, so she was in her soul state, and I called her by her soul name, and she was introducing me to all the people in her soul group. And she was saying, this is so-and-so, and this and so-and-so, and I could check them when she described them, the colours they were wearing, who do they remind you of in this life, and she would say, so I could look at the list and say, okay, these are the connections. And she went through all, and she said, but there's one who is turned away from me. One is not looking at me. And I don't know why. I know him, and that is a very strong connection. So I said to her, how do you feel about it? She said, I feel really strange about the fact that he's turned from me. I don't understand it. So I said to her, can you go to him? Don't stand at the doorway. Go into the circle to where he is, and let him face you. So she just does this, and then there's a moment of shock. And she says, oh my God. I said, what is it? She said, name, the stepfather. And there was a moment of silence while she and the stepfather connected. And she said, he's telling me, he's crying, and he's telling me, this was the hardest thing you've ever asked me to do. And she said, what do you mean? And he said, the raping, the abuse of you. This was, and she understood that was the agreement. That was what she had asked him to. And he said to her, Rinso said, are you sure? And she had said, and he said to her, do you remember you begged me? And I was reluctant because I love you so much. But what, and I said, feel in your heart, is this true? And she said, yes. That they were. This was a soul that loved. It was part of a group, and they were all developing together. And she could not believe that that humans could do this, whatever it was. And he said, because she said, I want to know. And we know from all the reports we've had from people, myself included, in Life Between Life, that if you want to experience contrast, you want to experience, we have senses which you don't have in the spirit world. We have access to information that we don't have in the spirit world that we have here. So there is learning to be had here. And you know that when you are there. When you have a sense of oneness, there's something that's very different when you come back to it with the knowledge of the differences that you are weaving together. There's a kind of a wholeness that's being filled up. Anyway, so they have this reconciliation, which we'll talk about. But when we came out of the trance, that was, she just could not stop talking about it, and it's something that truly affected her. And then later on I got an email from her to say that it completely changed her relationship with her mother, and all the energies in her were changed, and she was able to experience a whole different level of interaction with both parents, with the stepfather and with her mother. Anyway, so even though we don't do trauma healing, at the point of recognition, whatever trauma we've held dissolves. Because in your soul group there is nothing but the experience of love. So from the soul group you go to classrooms where you're teaching to your teacher, or where you're going to be taught. You look at who your teachers are, you see how they are connected in the current line. And if you've had a very traumatic death, there are healing areas in the spirit world where people go, and sometimes they go straight there to heal before they join their friends. And it's amazing the detail that you get from people who have this experience. And so I say to them, so when you're not at school, when you're not researching, when you're not teaching, what do you do? Or healing. Oh, I go to the library, I look at the Akashic records, I research on stuff that I want to look at, the history of the planet, different planets. Do you ever do interplanetary journeys? Yes, we do, some do, and have experienced living on them, and some have, some are incarnated on different planets, some just travel there. So we have all these accounts of people. It's a busy life up there, or wherever. There's not or down, but in the spaces between me and you, there are the worlds around us. And then, for me again, like in the past life regression, the death scene is the most important. In the life between life, well, there are two moments, too importantly, there's the thing of going to the council. So this is where you go to, I would say, so you do you have a sense of having to go to make a report to someone, or some group of people? And they'll say, yes, there's a group I go to, and we review things, and I have an assess of, have an indication of how well I've done, or in terms of various criteria that I've been wanting to pursue. So they'll go to have a meeting with their council. At the beginning, when Michael first started, the sense of councils were very heavy, very robed figures, generating sense of power, not harsh power, but powerful beings. Over the years, that's become softer in the reports from other therapists as well as from people I've been working with. So they're no longer, some people at the beginning had 12 members on their councils, now there's 3, and sometimes it's 1, and sometimes there's a self-assessment that happens. There's no sense of a formal gathering. And I think that's a testament to our own evolution, that we are no longer externalizing, even in the spiritual realm, our responsibility for our own development. We are now holding it to ourselves. But so there'll be a meeting with the council and the review. But what is fascinating is our ability to judge and to feel we need to be reprimanded. Oh, I did bad things. I raped. I killed. I need to be punished. And even in the spirit world, that's a very strong imprint on the incarnated beings. And the message always at the council is one of love, one of acceptance of self, of what you did, and being able to integrate and being able to see what you've learned as a result of what you've done, supporting the kind of information or the advice that the guides would give you. Often the guide is not part of the council. Sometimes the guide may well be, depending on your awareness of yourself in your evolutionary tract. So when the meetings with the councils are over, and in the sense of, I will ask the person, the spirit, so what does it feel like to know that you've met the council, and what's it feel like inside of you? There's always a sense of, oh, my energy is grown, and I feel there's a sense of approval that they have within them. And you can always see in their own energy field, it's brighter in them, a feeling of the thing that I feared that I might be, I'm actually not at any level. And that's a kind of for me, the last stage, and that is the one of the selection point. So I'll say to them, how do you know when it's time for you to reincarnate? How do you know? Does your guide come and tell you, call you? Is it like a phone call, an inner phone call? What's it like? And they'll say I just know. And I say, so where are you when you know that it's time to reincarnate? And one person was saying, well, I'm actually in the middle of teaching. And I'm going to say to my pupils, until next time. And they know it's a blip. It's not, this time isn't linear. So they leave the classroom, whatever they're doing, and they'll go to the life selection room. And for different people, it's viewed differently. Some people will see options of life on a screen. They'll see key moments, and they'll choose. Some people will say, well, and they will have a list of criteria. I want to live in this world, I want to have this being's culture, this climate, they be that specific. in what they want, and they will find a life. And then, and I say, okay, so you've chosen a life, and then what happens? Well, then I go. And then at that point, then it's time for me to bring them back. Oh my God. Okay, so 5 minutes? So they come back, and then there's the whole reviewing of. And it's important when they come back, they don't come back too quickly, because that can be quite a shock. Because you've been experiencing yourself in a high vibration, and then you've got to lower that vibration to come back into, because you don't want to shock the body. Because this body that you have, this body that we pay so little attention to, this body is what keeps you here, keeps you connected. This body is so important to our ability to learn what we are here to learn. So, guiding them gently back into the body and then waking them up to it. But there's one thing, it's really, really important. I'm sorry I waffled on at the beginning, but it's really important that we understand the brain, that we understand how the layering of the brain, how for our high consciousness to work, the body, the viscera, has to be in a place of openness and ease. So all the fears we had, all the kind of constraints and constrictions, we need to work through that to be able to access the finer energies that we call spiritual energies. So it's really important that we do that. But there is one amazing thing that I must read to you. I must. I'm sorry, David. Because it is so beautiful. Goddess is the mother. Do you remember that dark red room where you grew? That was Goddess. And remember the warm hands that received you into the world? That was God. And you remember your father's hands that held your face as if it was some kind of jewel? That was God. Or the world that is young and has loved so deeply and been betrayed, whose skin hangs like rags, and whose arms have no muscle, and whose eyes have lost luster. Open the door of your heartaches and step through the door of your betrayal. Pass through the hole that is left in your heart. Pass through because it is a door. Pass through because it's a gate. Open the door. Do you remember that your legs are the ring that circles the love, and your legs make a door? Pass through the door. Pass the bolts through, open the door, the most sacred of doors, the trail through your belly and the road up your spine. Remember, fire is a door, and song is a door, a star is a door. Open the door. And the forest on fire is a door, and the ocean ruined is a door. Anything that needs us or calls us to spirit is a door. Pass through the gate, open the door. Anything that hurts us, anything that needs us, open the door. Pass through the gate, open the door. All these years of seeming of indestructibility, the grandfather of your world dies and his heart explodes and yours breaks into 1,000 pieces. These are doors. Open the doors. Pass through the gates. Pass through these doors. The world is a tribe of one-breasted women. Walk through the door with scars on their chest. Open the door. Over the edge of the world you go into the abyss. You march in time and put the best medicine in the worst of the wounds. Pass through the gate. Open the door. The lake in which you almost drowned, that is a door. The slap in the face that made you kiss the floor, that is a door. Or the betrayal that sent you straight to the edge, that is a door. Pass through the gate, open the door. The same old story, all souls. All strong souls first go to the underworld before they do the healing of the world they came here for. If we are lucky, if we are lucky, poem of new life that comes every dawn, the soaring of sun, that is a door. The grave is a door. The gate to the underworld is a door. Pass through the gate, open the door, your grandfather, your grandmother, your mother, your father, that have died, leaving a hole in your life. Step through that door. That is an opening. That hole is a threshold. The hole is a gate. Pass through the gate. Open the door. Pass through the gate. Open the door. That's a poem from Teresa Pinto Estes, and I think it's one of the most beautiful poems I know about living the life and being open, so that we can experience the most amazing connections we are capable of having, of being truly spirit, spirits living, human beings living a spiritual existence. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this talk. Details of the Spirit Release Forum and the College of Healing can be found on our respective websites.